All right, it's division round weekend edition of the OFN Today on the Ourlads Football Radio Network with Mark Lawrence of Playbook.com and Covers.com. Mark, we have a big weekend. This is a great weekend, matter of fact. Our favorite weekend. At least that's what you told me last weekend.
Yes, that's correct. It is a good weekend because we've got good quality football teams playing, getting closer and closer to the Super Bowl. So we're beginning to weed out some of the softer opposition competition, if you will. I think this is going to be one heck of a weekend for NFL football.
Yeah, and overall, last weekend, what did you think? We had ourselves a big upset, with Tennessee, which was nice. That was good to see, and Kirk Cousins second upset, and he got the camel off his back, the monkey off his back. I thought it was kind of humorous though, the way they handled it. Like if they had, I just think it's funny when, look, it's not like Kirk Cousins has this 0-8 playoff record. Like, he has a terrible Monday night record, a terrible record against over 500 teams, that kind of thing. So he's got a bad record, but it's not like he was 0 for 12. It's like if Marvin Lewis won a playoff game. It wasn't like that. And they kind of treated it like that, but I also just think it was kind of funny. It's like, okay, you won a playoff game, guys. What do you want? You want a Super Bowl ring? You want some other kind of pat on the back? I mean, big whoopee-doo. Go out and win another game next week, and then we'll start talking about whether or not just winning one playoff game is that big a deal.
Well, he's beginning to erase all of the ugliness that's been out there about him, slow but sure. And the ugliness started, remember, basically when he played on a very, very bad Washington Redskin football team. And he's moved now to a team that knows how to win football games in Minnesota, and he's helping him to do just that. And I think the proof might be in the pudding. If you take a look at his numbers this year, his quarterback rating, there was only two other quarterbacks in the NFL that had better QB ratings for the season than Kirk Cousins this football season. So he's really had a terrific year all in all. And if he can move forward in the playoffs here, if he can pull another upset here in this divisional round game, I think the talk about Kirk Cousins and all the ugliness will be dissipated. If he loses this football game, it'll circle back into the Kirk Cousins who couldn't win a big football game when asked to win a big football game.
Well, last week we talked about how if they could just find a way to win the first playoff game, and how that could open the doors. We've seen it all. We just saw it with the Washington Nationals in baseball. It happens a lot in sports when a team or a player has a difficult time winning the big one, and then they break through. Now, let's remember, this is not about the Vikings, because the Vikings have won playoff games before. They just knocked off the Saints a couple of years ago with the miracle, and then laid an egg the week after in Philly. That was a different quarterback. That's why they went out and got Kirk Cousins. This is about Kirk Cousins. But it's still a huge relief for the organization to say, hey, we spent all this money on this player. He came through for us, did what he had to do. It wasn't like he was a superstar in the game, but he did what he had to do, make key throws when he had to make them, didn't turn the ball over, which was important, the way Drew Brees did down the stretch. And now anything's possible in these playoffs with the New England Patriots off the table. Any of these teams, I am serious when I say this, any of these teams can win the Super Bowl. It's wide open now.
It goes to the adage of much like anything can happen on any given Sunday in the NFL, and this year in the playoffs, I think that holds true specifically. The one last leg that Kirk Cousins is going to have to dispel here, and he did it a little bit last week. He was going into that game last week. He was just 3-26 in his career against teams that finished the season with 10 or more wins. So now he's 4-26, and he'll take on San Francisco in that same role this week. So if he can put back-to-back wins together after failing in 26 of his last 30 times doing just that, I think he can get the eraser out. If he doesn't, all of a sudden that mark becomes smudged and stays in stain, if you will, on a Kirk Cousins ledger.
Before we preview this Vikings-San Francisco game first, let's put to bed the Saints. Because remember last week I also mentioned I wanted everybody to kind of remember what happened last year in the playoffs with Drew Brees. Just remember what happened to him in the playoffs last year. And sure enough, it happened again. And some people were like, well, maybe it would be different because he didn't have the wear and tear on his body from the previous year. He had 5 or 6 games off, whatever. Maybe that would help him. But I'm sorry. I understand what Drew Brees means to this community. He means as much to this community as Tom Brady does to the Patriots. And even though Brady's got all these Super Bowls over Brees. But that's how much they love Drew Brees in New Orleans. But if it's about winning football games, championships more importantly, they've got to move on. It's enough of Drew Brees. That's it. I mean, he's too old. He's not getting it done at the right time. And whether you go to – now, in my mind, you got Bridgewater on the team. Don't lose him. You got him on the team. Make him the starting quarterback next year. Make Taysom Hill your backup and go from there. Hopefully Drew Brees sees what's going on and retires, because it would be tough. I get it if he's like Tom Brady. Look, not that Brady's decided to leave yet, but if we get the same thing with Brees where he winds up playing somewhere else in the last year or two of his career. But look, it's a business, and I think you got to move on now.
It's very, very difficult to ask a player that just led the league in passing percentage and passing yards to say that's enough. We've seen enough. I mean, my goodness, what more can we do? It's a little bit of a parallel to me.
Playoffs.
In hockey. I'm a hockey fan, and the Nashville Predators fired Peter Laviolette, their head coach, after he had done such a masterful job with the team, and they were in a slump this year. They didn't have a losing record.
I agree. I agree with that, by the way.
Yeah, and they let him go. It was absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. Well, in kind of a similar parallel, you'd be saying the same thing about Drew Brees, in that maybe he hasn't won enough of the big games. Down here in Miami, Dan Marino is a legend. And he never won a Super Bowl, but yet he's still a legend here, for what he's done and meant for the city. And the same thing will always hold true for Drew Brees in New Orleans.
Well, again, remember, it's not about, Drew Brees can't win the big one anymore. It's about Drew Brees is 40 years old. And when he's getting into these playoff games now, this isn't the same Drew Brees from 5 or 6 years ago. He was able to take that regular season play into the postseason. He's not doing that anymore. That's 2 in a row. I can't keep preseason, off-season, 16-game schedule, do it all over again, first game in the playoffs, and have Drew Brees, put a stinker out there again, and I've just wasted an entire year again. I'm sorry, but you have to see the writing on the wall. He's 40 years old. He can't carry this team anymore. And if he can't carry the team in the postseason, they have problems because it's Michael Thomas, it's Kamara, and that's it. It's sort of like Brady. At least Brees has got Kamara and Thomas. Brees doesn't have enough weapons. Maybe that's what the answer is, like it is in New England. Give these guys more weapons and stop relying on them the way that you did 5 or 6 years ago.
That's true. You spread the wealth, if you will, bring a little more wealth into the program. It would certainly help. And I wouldn't be one bit at all surprised to see one of these new NFL coaches make a strong, hard reach for Teddy Bridgewater.
Absolutely. He needs to be starting next year if the Saints want to keep going on with Brees.
And if a team like the Carolina Panthers decides that Cam Newton is they've had enough of him, he's injured, they're not going anywhere, don't be surprised to see them make a big push for Teddy Bridgewater in a trade that perhaps New Orleans couldn't turn down, because they'd be turning the keys over to a quarterback that's proven that he can win behind center in the NFL.
Yeah, I forget what Bridgewater's contract was, whether it was a 1 year or 2 year. I don't remember whether he's a free agent again or not.
I'm not sure either,
yeah.
but you would still expect a team with a new coach
absolutely
that needs to revamp or rebuild that program to make a reach for a quarterback, something like that.
No, there is no way Teddy Bridgewater, if they decide to keep Brees, there's no way Bridgewater's going to be on the Saints next year. No way.
No, it's just impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, and he would go to them and they'd say he'd plead his case, and they'd say, we understand completely where you're coming from, and we'll do everything we can to accommodate.
Yeah, again, if he's got another year left on his contract, because I don't remember if he signed a 1 year deal or not. Okay, so let's get with the Vikings and with San Francisco. For me, as a 7-point spread, this is about Mike Zimmer. This is your boy Mike Zimmer with the dog roll here, getting 7 points. I'm taking the Vikings in the 7. As you know, San Francisco and Seattle are like my 2 Super Bowl picks. Sort of my when Minnesota won the game, the first thing popped in my head was, "Ooh, I'm going to get my San Francisco-Seattle championship game now that I didn't think I was going to get because the Saints were involved." So now that's working out perfectly the way I've been thinking about it all year. So I like San Francisco still to win this game, but heck, Minnesota winning this game, a surprise? No way. I mean, the way that they played and the way Cousins played, Garoppolo never playing in a playoff game or never starting in a playoff game before. I like San Francisco to win a close football game, but yeah, Minnesota can definitely win this game.
I'm on the same page with you in the football contest as well, and it's maybe as much against San Francisco as it is on Minnesota for me in the game, and the against San Francisco side of the contest is the relative inexperience of this team. Haven't been to the playoffs in at least 6 years, and now they're an up-and-comer doing just that. There's a football team that won 4 football games last year, and you're asking them to lay a touchdown into a pedigree team like Minnesota. That's a dangerous situation to have to be into. They're going to be thrilled just to get out of there with a win, will San Francisco, let alone having to win this football game by a large margin. And we've got, again, I don't want to keep hammering it, but we've got Mike Zimmer in another ideal role in a football game like this against a non-division opponent when both teams are coming off spread wins. He's 19-5 against the spread in his career. You couple that with San Francisco's inability to cash tickets as a home favorite, just 3-15 the last 18 games as a home favorite here. I'm on Minnesota like white on rice in this game.
And also, number 1, of course, you can get some of this great information on if you subscribe to the Playbook newsletter. San Francisco, number 1 NFC seeds, have won 26 of 29 since 1990. And 17-1 straight up versus teams off wild card upsets over the last 18. So there is that side that you like with San Francisco with the historical numbers, but I will say I don't know, and we'll find out after this round when we take a look at all this data, this historical data. I just have a sneaking feeling that like I mentioned at the top with the Patriots now out. I just got a feeling that this is just going to be a different kind of playoffs. This is going to be wild. It's going to be wide open. And I think there's going to be stuff that's going to happen, or maybe even a team wins that nobody would have thought coming into the playoffs. I just think it's going to be that kind of a playoff. So I'm interested to see whether those historical trends hold up.
Well, they've got their hopes high in San Francisco, and those are really good numbers. That's one reason why we did not call for Minnesota to win the game, because of the record of the number 1 seeds in the NFC in the playoffs being what it is, what you just mentioned. And you've also got for San Francisco, they've got some key players coming back on defense here that are monsters, okay? When they've all been on the field together here, their production has been total shutdown.
Right.
They're going to have that on the field here this particular week. So we'll see whether or not everything can gel and mesh for San Francisco. If they do, and Minnesota doesn't have their way offensively here, they're going to need probably a big game from Dalvin Cook here to open things up for Kirk Cousins, because you don't want to have to rely on Kirk Cousins first. You kind of want to have him be your go-to source after you've had a running game established. I think Dalvin Cook's going to be the big key in this football game.
Yeah, definitely. That's why, as I mentioned, it wasn't like Cousins had this tremendous game statistically. He didn't have to, because Dalvin Cook looked great after a week or 2 off. By the way, you mentioned, so D Ford looks like he's going to be back. He's one of those guys that's going to add pass rushing presence. Quan Alexander comes back, the linebacker. That's going to help him out. Coverage, Rudolph, things like that. You also got Richard Sherman, who's still one of the best corners in football, who's going to be able to probably match up with Stephon Diggs and take him out of the game. And if you can take Diggs out of the game, then, he'll power down the sidelines again. I don't know how much longer you can power down the sidelines when you're winning playoff games and get away with it. But I think that's a definite advantage. And you brought up a good point about their defense, because everybody was maybe coming up with other ideas why San Francisco's defense wasn't playing as well as they had early on in the season. The reason was they had injuries. They had some key guys that were not there. early in the season when we remember this San Francisco defense was as dominant as any defense in the NFL.
They were a shutdown defense. The first half of the football season here, they were the number one ranked defense in the National Football League, up to go along with the number one ranked rushing offense. So, they had everything working for them their way. Then the defense got banged up. The offense sort of opened things up a little bit, like we talked last week when Emmanuel Sanders came along, who's been a great addition for the football program. But the offensive line got banged up. So the bottom line to San Francisco is, if they're healthy, they're a very, very live number one seed. But they're going to have to prove it to me. Again, I don't ever recall knowing of a number team that won 4 games the previous year that went on to win a Super Bowl.
All right. Well, as I mentioned, though, this could be one of those crazy years. It could happen.
Yes.
And also the matchup that could be very important is, especially if Dalvin Cook's going to have any success, they've got that rookie center, Bradbury, who might turn out to be a really good center, first-round draft pick, but he's a rookie. And he's going up against Brenson Buckner and that San Francisco defensive line. That is a matchup San Francisco needs to dominate in this specific game to be able to shut down Dalvin Cook. Okay, now let's get to the other NFC game, the 2015 NFC Championship game rematch, Seattle and the Packers. And hopefully fans remember, and I think they do, if they need a refresher, what a great championship game that was. That was the game that the Packers led 16-0 at halftime. They led like 19-7 with 3 minutes to go in the game. And they got the onside kick Seattle after they scored. They took the lead late. Green Bay comes back with a couple of seconds to tie the game on a field goal. They go to overtime, and Seattle wins on a touchdown, Russell Wilson touchdown. Russell Wilson threw 4 interceptions in the game, and they won. Aaron Rodgers threw 2 interceptions. It's one of only 2 career playoff games that Aaron Rodgers threw more interceptions than touchdown passes, and of course he lost. So 17 degrees. This is Lambeau Field, though. That was Seattle, and Lambeau's a place Russell Wilson's never won.
That's right. He's won all 3 games in Seattle against Green Bay, but he's lost all 4 games at Lambeau Field. So it's been a true home series domination as far as Russell Wilson is concerned within this series here. But you can take a look at what's happened here. First of all, you've got the only 2 quarterbacks in NFL history that each have career passing ratings of 100 or higher. There's nobody in the NFL history that has 100 or higher career ratings, and they're both playing in the same game, Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. My contention, or my point, the reason I'm bringing that out is that Aaron Rodgers' career passing rating has gone down dramatically since he suffered the broken collarbone to his right throwing shoulder. He has not been the same quarterback, and whether he's 100% healthy or not, that's arguable, but you can't refute the facts and the stats, and that's what happens to be. Aaron Rodgers is a 112.9 career passing rating before the injury, and since the injury, he's been 95.6. Those are some dramatic fall-offs for Aaron Rodgers here. Now, whether or not it's all attributable to that shoulder, the offensive line, the lack of a running attack behind him, who knows what not. But the bottom line is he has not been peaking. He's been going backwards. And if it weren't for Lamar Jackson and the outstanding year that he's had thus far this football season, Russell Wilson would be hands down the MVP of this football league. He's a one-man show for the Seattle football team here this year. He's taken them on his shoulders, and he's delivered the goods. And what I like about him the most is he steps up in big games, especially as an underdog in his career, 18-5-1 to the spread, taking points for Russell Wilson in football games. Then you've got Green Bay, who won 6 games last football season here. You don't find success at all for teams that were losing teams last year, that are playing teams that were winning teams last year in the playoffs. They get the snot knocked out of them. You've got that with Green Bay against Seattle here. And my final dissertation on this football game is this. I've talked all season long about Green Bay being this famous smoke and mirrors team where they win the game and they get out-yarded. They win the game and they get out-yarded. It's to the point of almost ridiculousness all season long. And if you look at them right now, they've allowed more yards than they've gained here, obviously, for the football season here. I don't trust a favorite that does just that. In God we trust. And when it comes to football and underdogs, in underdogs Russell Wilson we trust. I'll be on Seattle in this football game.
Yeah, also throw in the fact that at the right time, because remember I said last week that Seattle has been my Super Bowl pick for almost the whole season, and then
Yes.
I had to change my mind because of the injuries at running back and the offensive line. But I wanted to see how this game went and whether or not they showed me something other than just winning an ugly game. And what they showed me was a few things, and maybe the most important thing was DK Metcalf. And the
Yes.
fact that he had a record-breaking performance as a rookie in a playoff game, you've got Lockett. Hollister's been doing a nice job, another new addition at tight end with Disley out for the season. And then you throw in, of course, Marshawn Lynch, who can only be getting better and more into a rhythm the more reps he gets after being out for a while. And you have Russell Wilson, as you just talked about. Throw in the fact that they had 7 sacks last week, with Clowney being back, which is another thing that we mentioned. Let's see if Clowney can look like the real deal again, and he certainly did. And they did definitely enough for me to pick them in this game. Now, they're getting 4, so I don't even have to worry about giving any points here. I'm not going to worry about the money line at plus 165 because I think those points are way too valuable in a playoff game. 4 points, especially in case this is a field goal type of game or even less. So I'm taking the points with Seattle, going with both NFC dogs. The only thing I'm a little bit worried about, Pete Carroll's never won a playoff game as a road playoff dog. So I'm a little bit concerned with that, even though he's covered 4 out of 7. So let's keep that in mind. But most importantly, we also talked about it last week, Seattle has been a road warrior team this year. 8-1 straight up, 6-1-2 against the spread on the road.
Yeah, absolutely. The epitome of a road warrior are the Seattle Seahawks. And while it's been that way this year, it's been that way pretty much since Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll were married in the National Football League. They've won more games as a tandem than any other team in the National Football League. And that pushes Tom Brady and Bill Belichick for success on the road. That's how good Seattle has been in football games. The other thing that I also draw to Seattle in this football contest is this. They're a 12-win football team. 11 of those 12 wins were in one possession games, which speaks to the fact that they know how to win close football
That's right.
games. Exactly, and that's what you find in playoffs in situations like this are generally head-to-head, who scores last type football games. And if it's head-to-head, who scores last, I'll want the Seattle Seahawks on my
I
ticket.
also like the fact that their offensive line, which has been banged up, can only get healthier as we move to another week. There's a possibility Dwayne Brown plays this week. Of course, he didn't even play last week. He's their best lineman. Not sure about Iopati, who did not play last week. I would expect Hunt, the center, and Fant, the tackle, to play in this game, even though they're also banged up. So they have a chance to be healthier, much healthier on the offensive line this week compared to last week's game against the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, so that's the NFC. Let's turn our attention now to the AFC. And the big one for everybody as far as the MVP, Lamar Jackson, is whether or not the dynamic offense from the regular season will translate to the postseason. Now, we didn't see that happen last year, even though that was a completely different team. But Jackson played in the game, got up to a really bad start, didn't look good at all, put up some good numbers like in the fourth quarter, made it closer than it really was. But, hey, you know what? It's a rookie playoff game. It happens. I have said this repeatedly. Whether it's let's take a look at this down the road, a couple years, or this year, I still don't believe in it. Of course, they have a much better chance to get the Super Bowl this year in an anything can happen playoffs, and maybe 2 or 3 years from now, this offense turns out to be gimmicky. Whatever. You've got your Super Bowl. You did it. It's over. But I got to see it. Tennessee, Vrabel, this is a very well-coached football team. They're a solid defensive football team. If you take a look at the last 2 playoff teams that Lamar Jackson and the Ravens played this season, San Francisco, they gained 283 yards. Buffalo, 257 yards. when they step up and have to play really good defensive teams, Lamar Jackson doesn't run all over the place. So I anticipate that this game is going to be a tough, low-scoring, somewhere like last week's Tennessee-New England game. That's the way I'm going to see this game too. Not that low-scoring, but I could see it being the winning team probably scores less than 24 points. But I like Tennessee. Will they pull up the upset? I am picking one upset. I am going to put them in that category. It's not like I'm high on Tennessee to win the game. It's more of I like this Tennessee team. I don't think what we saw last week was a fluke. I had them last week to beat the Patriots, so I'm going right back to them again. I need to see Lamar Jackson and this offense do it in the postseason.
Well, one thing you've got working for you in Tennessee that you didn't mention a point is this, is you've got an outstanding, and I mean outstanding running back in Derrick Henry, who really put it to New England last week. And I do a daily email, and I call it the Coffee Club. And every morning in your email box is my coffee club, and it's my overview of what's going on the card that day. So you get a nice little handicapping take, some vignettes, some things you didn't know, so forth and whatnot. Tomorrow's coffee club, Saturday morning, is going to be talking about the high school career that Derrick Henry had down here in Florida. And it was mind-boggling, not just impressive, mind-boggling, okay? The kid ran for over 12,000 yards in high school. He averaged over 9 yards a carry in high school. He is a running machine. That's, I think, the best asset Tennessee has coming into this football game. And you also, just by happenstance, happen to have a quarterback who leads the NFL in quarterback rating this year, and that's Ryan Tannehill, who's been a big, pleasant surprise for Tennessee this football season here. Mike Vrabel, a very good head coach, as we saw last week. He actually outcoached Bill Belichick in that football game. That's a large reason why they're here this particular week. Those are all the pluses for Tennessee, and there's plenty of them to come into this contest with. The thing that I don't like about their chances out of my database is the fact that this is their third straight road game in a row in the playoffs, and teams that are doing just that have really come up sour. It's very, very difficult to have to do just that. Then they also knocked off the defending champion New England Patriots last week. And you look at teams in their next game in the playoffs, if it happens to be a divisional round or a championship game after knocking off the defending champions, they're 1-13 straight up and 2-12 against the spread. So there's some very, very high hurdles for Tennessee to have to get over in this football game. If they're able to get over them, I'm not going to be shocked because of everything we talked about. The coaches, the players, the talent, everything so forth and whatnot. They could indeed be the team flying the most under the radar right now. The Tennessee Titans could well be that. But I've got to live by what my well-oiled machine tells me, and that tells me that Tennessee is in a real tough situation handicapping-wise. With that, I'm going to lean to the Baltimore Ravens in this contest.
Oh, you got the two Heisman Trophy Alabama running backs. Ingram looks like he's going to play in this game, going up against Derrick Henry, who you mentioned. Jaylen Brown, the top linebacker for Tennessee, is out. He's not a difference-making type player, so even though it's a bad luck deal for the Titans to not have their best linebacker in there, I don't think that's going to determine the outcome of the game. Kevin Byard, he makes plays out in the secondary, and that's what's kind of always gets everybody to notice safeties when they make big interceptions. It's why he's had a really good everybody's noticed him. He's had a really good couple of years, but he's also an elite run defender. And that's the thing that he's going to need to be in this football game, of course, with Baltimore rushing the football the way that they do. Now, looking past this game, one of the things I noticed at Playbook, since 1983, 17 teams have scored more than 510 points in the regular season. Only one of those teams have won the Super Bowl. And they sure didn't win that easy. The Rams in 2000 winning by an inch over the Tennessee Titans. So another reason, I guess, that kind of I feel good about when I look at the Ravens as a Super Bowl favorite and knocking them out of the picture and taking other teams that have much better odds and a shot to win it. Something like that makes me feel good.
Well, here's the game plan for me, Greg, as far as that stat you just ran by everybody about scoring more than 510 points. If Tennessee makes it to the Super Bowl, we will have one of the best Super Bowl handicapping angles in place, and that is a quarterback in the Super Bowl who is the league's MVP. They choke like
Oh, you're talking
dogs,
about
those teams.
Baltimore if they go to the Super Bowl.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So if Baltimore happens to make it to the Super Bowl, they will be led by an MVP quarterback. Go back a game. If they get past Tennessee in this football game, they're going to have to get by Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes, and that is not going to be an easy task. Bottom line here is between this game and next week, most probably against Kansas City, and in the Super Bowl against whomever, they've got three very, very difficult tasks to get past as Baltimore to win a Super Bowl. And I'm with you. I don't think they're going to smell the Super Bowl as far as a win goes, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if they don't even make it to the Super
And
Bowl.
by the way, Harbaugh, who is a great coach, he usually goes to the postseason and has success in the dog role. He's been a dog most of his career in the postseason because he's had to deal with the Patriots almost every time he's in the postseason. So he's not in the role as a favorite, especially a big home favorite like this, a whole lot. So that's also something to keep in mind. We love Harbaugh in the playoffs or in big games as dogs, but now he's in that almost double-digit favorite kind of situation, which is not something that he has a great track record. He doesn't have a bad track record, but he just doesn't have as good as a track record on the other side. Okay, now let's wrap it up with the other game you mentioned, Kansas City and Houston. And look, this is the game out of the four where when I was predicting the point spread, I couldn't believe it. I got to tell you, I don't know what you thought, but there is no way that I think Houston was going to be getting close to 10 points. I'm sorry, but I don't get it. I know Houston didn't play a great game. It was one of those games where Houston and Buffalo looked like they both wanted to lose. It looked like a game where, these two teams probably don't even deserve to be in a postseason. I get all that, but this is still Deshaun Watson. The Chiefs, as we've been saying for the past few weeks, the offense is not clicking the way that it did last year. They're relying on their defense more than their offense. And that means and then throw in the Andy Reid factor, and then throw in the fact that the Chiefs have been a bad home playoff team. And I'm gobbling up those 10 points, man.
Well, I don't disagree with you at all with this. And in fact, this is the only game on the slate this weekend that there is same season revenge involved in the football game. These two teams met here at Arrowhead earlier in the year when Houston was a 3-point underdog, not a 10-point underdog, a 3-point underdog, and they put a whipping on Kansas City.
And they won the game.
They won the game and they pounded them in the yards, okay? They beat them thoroughly in the football game. So they're going to take the field here with the utmost of confidence and knowing that they've done it before, they can do it again with the Houston Texans. You've also got a quarterback here in Deshaun Watson who is very, very similar to my buddy Russell Wilson, who is outstanding in his career as a dog, and so too is Deshaun Watson. 12-4-1 to the spread in his career, taking points in the National Football League. You've got Kansas City here. This is the team that everybody wants to get on the bandwagon with now. Why? Because Patrick Mahomes, it's Kansas City, and the fact that they've closed out the season right now riding a 6-game point spread win streak, 6-0 straight up in ATS. So they're humming right now, but they're not humming like they used to hum when Patrick Mahomes before he got hurt. He's just not putting up Patrick Mahomes-like numbers here. They're winning the games, and they're doing it a little bit more with their defense than they are with their offense here. This is a name and reputation play for me in this game here. Everybody loves Kansas City. They can't wait to get enough of them. And it's that mentality of the public bettor that doesn't want to let a winner get past them. And they feel in their mind that Kansas City is going to win this football game. They have to be on Kansas City here. For that reason, and the contrarian blood that lives in me, I'll be on the Houston Texans.
Yeah, Kansas City 1-7, straight up ATS, last 8 home playoff games. That is absolutely pathetic. I can't imagine an NFL team with a worse record than that. That is pathetic. Then Andy Reid, 0-8 against the spread all time as a home, at home. off a division game with revenge. Of course, they got the revenge situation. And more importantly, because it's the playoffs, 1-3, Andy Reid, straight up ATS at home as a favorite with the Chiefs. And don't forget the Chiefs Tennessee playoff game in 2017 when the Chiefs were what? A 9-point favorite and couldn't beat a team that fired their coach after the following week, Mike Mularkey. And the Titans, you can't even beat Mike Mularkey in that football game. And look, O'Brien has never won a playoff game as a dog. I get that, but let's keep in mind, 2015 he had Brian Hoyer. Okay, 4 interceptions in the game and 1 fumble. And then in the game that they lost to the eventual Super Bowl champion Patriots in 2016 as a 16-point dog. In that one, they had Brock Osweiler. Okay? So this is Deshaun Watson. This is different until he starts losing more games like Andy Reid in these roles with Deshaun Watson, then we could start talking about it. But also, like Seattle, not as good, but keep in mind, Houston 5-3 straight up, 6-2 against the spread in 8 games this year as a dog. So they're a really good dog team. You mentioned Watson's a good dog quarterback, and it just the only question is, what do you do anything with the money line? And I say absolutely. How much? That's up to you. But I'm getting 3-1 on the money line. I'm putting the majority of my money, of course, on the 10, but I'm definitely throwing a few bucks in some way, maybe in a parlay. Maybe I go parlay a little bit of money with Houston on the money line and Seattle +4.
Why don't you just go all in and do Houston on the money line, Seattle on the money line, and also Tennessee on the money line?
Don't think I won't.
All 3 of those, my goodness.
I know.
Anything can happen.
That is the one thing that I'm a little bit concerned with, is that I've taken all 4 dogs this weekend, and that's a scary thing to do in the playoffs. But I am hoping that my belief in that this is going to be a strange playoff season, maybe that's going to kind of work in my favor. Chances are I'll probably go 2-2. 2 dogs will cover, maybe even win outright. But I'm taking all 4 dogs this week.
Well, it's strange that everybody for the longest time made a living backing these NFL rested home teams in this division round. Then they went sour. The whole betting world caught onto it. Vegas adjusted with the point spreads, and it became a losing proposition. Well, they've circled back, and they've won the last 3 years now, have these home teams with rest the past 3 football seasons. So what will Vegas do here? They'll have adjusted in this football game, and what usually goes around comes back the other way. And I'm with you. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see these home teams struggle this weekend in this divisional round.
And by the way, not only is it going to be really cold in Green Bay, but it's still going to be cold, 35 degrees in Kansas City. The running game has to come into play. The Chiefs don't have a running game. Their number 1 running back, Damian Williams, doesn't even have 500 yards on the season. Carlos Hyde had a huge game in the first matchup earlier this year against his former team. He's the best running back on the field. That, I think, is clearly important. Chiefs don't have good linebackers. They haven't had good linebackers for years. And even though the defense is playing well, let's keep in mind they've already lost Ogba and Okafor in the second half of the season. And then they just lost their excellent rookie safety, Juan Thornhill, for the year when he got hurt down the stretch. So as well as Spagnuolo and this defense has played down the stretch, they're just not that good with bad linebacking core to lose the players that they've lost. I mean, what do they expect, Terrell Suggs to come up with a 4-sack game? Come on, he's like 40 years old. So I just think this is – I'd be very surprised if Kansas City covered this football game.
40 years old. You sound like you're in the anti-Drew Brees, Tom Brady bandwagon.
Right. Terrell Suggs will join him next.
Yes.
All right, Mark. So how's everything else going on at Covers and Playbook?
Going real well, Greg. Like you can tell, we're ready for these playoffs this particular weekend at Playbook. We've just published our first. We're doing weekly basketball with a newsletter now. Our first edition is online right now, available, just loaded with all kinds of great information. If you like the hoops, you'll love the Playbook basketball newsletter. And you'll love what I post at covers.com this weekend for all the NFL football
All
games.
right, Mark. Appreciate it as always. Enjoy the games, and we'll talk championship week football next Friday.
Hey, I look forward to it, Greg. Enjoy the games. Be